with me delegating filter proxy. Notice do filter internal JWT token for validation, not the username and password.
Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to Think Constructive. I am Isha. In this session, I will be talking about how to validate the JWT token for your Java Spring Boot application. This session is going to be very helpful for all the Java developers, leads and architects. And also I would like to suggest keep your machines ready, follow along, code with me so that you get maximum benefit out of this session. Stay connected, watch the session till the end so that you are not going to miss upon on any of the good concepts. So let us quickly start with the session now.
So here is the IntelliJ IDEA editor and I have kept open the bookstore project which we have been building in this series of sessions. So if you haven't yet watched those sessions, session details are getting displayed on the screen right now. Find out some time and watch those sessions. For now, I will give you the quick overview of whatever we have done so that you can quickly catch up and do the validate token or validate JWT token part from here onwards. Alright, so we are building this project using Java Spring Boot. Database what we are using is MongoDB. And we are directly using the MongoDB's Docker image, and for security part we are using Spring Security. So here is the src main Java, and inside this you can notice com.thinkconstructive.bookstore project is here. So what we have done in this project, we have built the book controller, okay, and you can notice CRUD APIs are exposed for this book controller, and we have DTO for book DTO, entity, book entity, mapper for DTO to entity, entity to DTO, and repository layer for book repository and service layer for book service, right? So this is the basic CRUD operations what we have done for this bookstore. Now from the security point of view, we have built user info controller, and user info controller we have exposed two endpoints. One is registration, another one is login. Okay, first users details such as username and password will be registered and stored in the database, and the database what we are using is MongoDB, and from those stored username and password, user will be authenticated and authorized. Fine. So and for this login, in the last session, what we have done the part of create JWT token. So this login endpoint is exposed for that. Alright, so when we use this login endpoint with the help of username and password, this will generate the JWT token. Let's go inside this and see. Okay, you can see authentication manager and JWT service dot generate token will be called. Fine. So here is the generate token code and all the relevant supporting code is mentioned here. Fine. So this is what we have done. And yeah, one more thing, security config. So in the security config, security filter chain what we have written, authentication provider, authentication manager and all the relevant stuff. So this is all we have covered till last session. So in the last session, as I mentioned, we have done the create JWT token part. So in this session, we will be doing the validate JWT token part. Alright. Now before starting the validation part, let us come back to this Spring Security diagram which we have discussed earlier. And what we understood, once the HTTP request comes in, the sequence of filter chain gets executed and delegating filter proxy, as you can notice this part, delegating filter proxy will delegate for the security validation stuffs to the security filter chain. And then the series of security filters will get executed, followed by authentication manager for authenticating and filling up the security context holder with principal authorities and credentials. Alright, so this is how the flow is. Now, what do we want? We want to validate the JWT. Means That means when user will try to access the bookstore, he or she need not to fill the username and password. Rather, they will be providing the access token or JWT token what has been generated and provided to the user. Alright, so user will try to access the bookstore now along with the JWT token. Alright, and then the JWT token has to be validated. So here, once the delegating filter proxy will hand over request to security filter chain, first what is expected that before username and password authentication filter, what we have done earlier, what is needed? JWT validation part or validation filter should be invoked, and that should validate the provided JWT token, and once the token is validated, the response will be sent back and the remaining things will be processed. Alright, so this is what is expected and this is what we are going to code now. Fine, I hope this part is clear. So here is the bookstore project, and as we discussed, what do we need to do? We need to do something to invoke the JWT validation part before the user password authentication filter. In order to do so, we will make use of this security filter chain, and right after this line, what will I do? I will just say http security dot add filter before. Okay, so what am I going to guide? That it should add JWT filter. I will give the name to the JWT validation code or validation part as JWT filter. Okay, and before what I would like to place it? I would like to place it before username and password authentication filter. Alright, so this part we have added for JWT validation. Okay, now you must be wondering where is JWT filter, and that's where it is giving me this red error. So this class I am yet to add. This is not something which is inbuilt and provided here. We need to write this code, write this class and make it available here. So we'll do that in a while. I'm just showing you where we are going to use it and then we are going to code it. Okay. For now, I will just auto wire this JWT filter also here. Okay. So here I will just auto wire I will give the class name as JWT filter. Okay. And then I will place this name and that's it. Fine. This JWT filter, it's not able to identify, as I mentioned. It's not something which is inbuilt or provided by Java. Rather, I am going to write this class. Fine. So where do we write this JWT filter? Let me write it in the config package itself. Okay. I'll just say new Java class JWT filter. Alright, let me add it to get. So here is a public class JWT filter which should extend once per filter request. Okay. Once per request filter, it's going to extend. Why am I extending this particular filter? Because I just want that whenever any request comes in, this authentication request which should be fulfilled by JWT filter should be executed exactly once. I don't want the repeated thing because once the authentication mechanism is done, that should be it, right? So this is the purpose of this once per request filter. I will show you this also. So here is the abstract class once per request filter. And what is the purpose? Filter base class that aims to guarantee a single execution per request dispatch or any servlet container. It provides do filter internal method. Notice do filter internal. We are going to implement this method with HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response arguments. Fine. So this giving me an error. Why? Because we are extending an abstract class. So we are supposed to implement its abstract methods. Alright. So what do? I will just say implement method. And what is the method we should implement? It's do filter internal. So we are going to override this do filter internal. Let me give a space so that it's more readable. Alright, and what am I supposed to do inside this do filter internal? Before that, let us have a look. What is it saying? HTTP servlet request, HTTP servlet response, and filter chain. These things we need, right? So we need request in order to get the values and authenticate. So we are going to make use of this HTTP servlet request parameter. Fine. And what does it do? It throws servlet exception and IO exception. Fine. So inside this method for implementation, what am I supposed to do? I am supposed to get headers from this request, because what happens? These authentication parameters comes in HTTP servlet request. Fine. So we'll be using request headers in order to get the token and to validate them. Alright. How do we get that? Let me just say string auth header. Okay. From where do we get the header? We'll get it from request.get header. And what is the header name we are supposed to write? Then only it will be able to give us the header values. So it should be authorization. So this authorization header we'll get from request.getHeader. Fine. So once we get authorization header, you must be thinking, why am I taking this as authorization header? So let me just switch to Postman and show you some formats for that. So here is a Postman window, and let me open this get URL. So in the authorization, there are different auth types. Earlier what we were doing, we were using basic authentication, wherein we were providing this username and password here itself. Now we want this authorization should take place with the help of JWT token. So what do? We will just select bearer token here, and herein we will be filling the token values. Okay, and everything is coming under authorization header. That is where we are getting, first of all, we are getting this authorization header from the request, and the next step is we will take value from the bearer and whatever token is the provided. I am just writing here in the comment box so that you can get more clarity. So once we get this auth header, what will come here in the auth header now? Bearer space, and then here you will get the JWT token. Fine. That's how something you will get. JWT token will be some very long value. Okay. So I'll show you all these things in the demonstration. So don't worry. Currently I'm just explaining the concept so that you can understand whatever I'm writing in the code. Okay. Bearer, one space, and then it will be followed by the JWT token value. Fine. So in the auth header, what we are expecting is something like this. Fine. But for JWT token validation, one more step we should do. We should extract, or we should remove this bearer space, and then only we will be able to exactly extract the JWT token value. So for doing that, I will just take some more parameters. I will just initialize it with null. Fine. And let me just take one more parameter here. I will tell you why am I taking it. Now, if whatever auth header we have extracted, we just would like to check it has some values or not, and it has bearer or not, something like that. Some basic sanity checks I would like to do. So what do? I will just say auth header is not equal to null, basic null check. Okay. and auth header dot starts with bearer. Fine. So this is something I would like to ensure that auth header has some values and it is starting with bearer. Then only I would like to go ahead and extract something. Let's say it doesn't have anything because of some error, and we will try to extract values out of null. We will always get null pointer exception. In order to save from null pointer exception or those kind of exceptions, I am just putting all these checks. Fine. So now herein I will just say, since it is not null, so I should be able to get some value out of it, right? So JWT token variable should now contain auth header dot the token value. How do I get the token value? Because it is prefixed with bearer space. So I need to extract that value. For that I will just say auth header dot substring, and it should start with index 7. Fine. Why do I say index 7? Because if you count this bearer from index 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, including space. So JWT token value is starting from index 7. That is where I said substring 7. Fine. And then next step is I would like to get the username from this. So we should be extracting this username from the JWT token. For that we'll be writing some methods. Okay. So for now I am leaving this thing here as is, because we'll be creating those extraction of username and those kind of methods in JWT service. Alright, so for now let us leave it here. Fine. And I'll open my JWT service. So here in JWT service, let us quickly create the extract username. Okay. So I'll just say public string, because I expect it to return the username, which should be string. Okay. I'll just say extract username. Okay, you can give any name. I'm just giving a more explanatory name to the method. Okay, I'll just say string JWT token. Alright. So from this JWT token, I would like to extract the username. So since I have included this method in the interface, so its implementation class, which is JWT service simple, should be implementing it. I'll just say implement methods, extract username, and it will create a method signature here. Alright, so there is some standard code which I will be writing and I will explain you that. Okay. So for extracting username, I'll just put 2 more methods here. Okay. And this extract claim will be calling here. Okay. And in this, what should I give? I will just say JWT token and claims : get subject. What we are doing essentially here is, from this extract claim method, inside this we are passing JWT token and claims.get subject. Fine. And from this claims class, what we are providing, get subject, because subject is essentially we would like to extract. So inside this extract claim method, we are just saying extract all claims, which is another method, extract all claims, which will accept JWT token. Fine. And from JWTs.parser, remember we included JWT libraries. So from JWTs.parser, it will say verify with get key. Get key is here. Fine. So the key which we use to encrypt, the same key we are using, will be using for decryption. Fine. And that should build the response. Parse signed claims. Which claims? From the JWT token and get payload. Fine. So from extract all claims, it will provide whatever claims it is getting. Claims will come here in this claims. So from the claims resolver, it will apply and pass all the claims. So what claim specifically we would like to get is get subject, which we'll be able to get after this method execution. Fine. So once we call this extract claim here inside extract username, it will provide us, or it will return the username from this JWT token. Alright, so now let's go ahead and use this method in our JWT filter class. What do? We will just say JWT service. Why am I getting the error? Because I have not yet auto-wired this JWT service. Let me go ahead and do that. Auto-wired. Okay. JWT service. Fine. And let me make it private. Fine. So JWT service dot extract username, and inside this I will just say JWT token. Alright. So once this gets executed, it will provide me the username. Now what are the next steps? We will just check whether we have got the proper username or not. So we will do a basic null check, and we will just check whether it is already authenticated or not, because if it is already authenticated, we are not supposed to re-authenticate. Fine. So we'll just putting all those basic checks here. So I will just say username is not equal to null. Okay. And so from the security context holder, because if you remember, security context holder object gets filled once the authentication and authorization is done. Fine. So this context gets filled. So if it is already filled for this user, why do we want to re-authenticate the same stuff? We'll not do that, right? So we are going to check whether this is null or not. Fine. So what do? Get context, then get authentication. If this is null, then only I would like to proceed and do the validation part. Otherwise, there is no need. If username is not null and context holder is null, then in that case, I would first like to load username, right? If you remember, we discussed user details service. With the help of user details service, and for calling user details service, we should be auto-wiring application context. Okay. Application context will auto-wire. We will get the instance of this user details service. How? For that, we will be using application context, which we have just now auto-wired. From this, we will get the bean user info user details service impl dot class. Okay, and from this bean we will call load user by username, and we will pass username here. Okay. So what we have done here is, from application context, we have got the bean of user info user details service impl, and from here we called the method load user by username. For which user? The user which we have just now extracted. Alright. So with the help of this, we are able to get the instance of user details service. And with the help of this user details service, we will be further validating the token. Okay. So now for token validation, finally, we will be creating one more method where in JWT service. Okay. So let us go inside JWT service. So here in JWT service, let us create one more method called validate token. And what should it return? It will return Boolean true or false, because whether the token is validated or not validated. Alright. So I will just give the name as validate token, and what should be the parameters? A string JWT token. Okay. okay, and user details. Fine. What we'll be doing, we will be creating validate token, and inside this method we will be passing the token which should be validated and the user details service instance which we have just now got. Fine. And let's go ahead and implement this. So I will just say implement methods. So a blank method signatures are created and by default started returning false. So let's go ahead and implement this. So inside this, let us first extract the username. Okay. So what do we do? I will just say final string username. Okay. And I will just call extract username and will pass JWT token here. Okay. And once we have called the extract username, for this username, we will check whether its token is expired or it is valid. We need to do a few steps. For that, I will be just pasting some methods here and will explain. So we will be making use of is token expired method, which we'll be calling here. What this method will do, it will take this token and will call extract expiration, and in this extract expiration A, what we are doing, we will just calling extract claim. So this extract claim will this time check JWT token for this claims : get expiration. So what this JWT token will do this time, earlier if you remember we have got the claims get subject, this time it is get expiration. So it will get its expiration date. Fine, that is where this method is returning the date. So it will get the token date and it will compare it with the current date, and accordingly it will return true or false. Fine. So this default return false should now be replaced with username dot equals, fine, equals with what? User details dot get username. Fine. So usernames will be compared. Whatever username we have in our user details service, it will be compared with that. Fine. And then it will check whether token is expired or not. Fine. So once these checks are fulfilled, it will return true or false accordingly. Right. So now let us go ahead and call this validate token here in our JWT filter. So I will just call validate token, and inside this validate token, two parameters I am supposed to pass. So I will just say JWT token and user details. That's how we call this. Now for this validation token, once this token is validated, there are further steps to be executed. So let me just put this validate token under if block. Okay. If the token is validated, then only we are supposed to do the next steps. Otherwise, there is no need, right? So what are the next steps? I will just check the authorities. So what do? I will just say user name, password, authentication token. Okay. And what do? I will just say user name, password, authentication token. I will construct this with the help of user details. Okay. There are three parameters it is expecting. Okay. So first I have given user details. Credentials, let me just give it as null, and then the authorities. Authorities we can get from user details dot get authorities. All right. Now once this authentication token is in place, we will set the details. Okay. new web authentication details source. This is the class, remember, you need to call. There are some set standard stuffs, so we do that as it is. I will just say build details, okay, forward request. Fine. And then once this is done, we will call security context holder dot get context, and in that I will be setting now the authentication, because now the authentication is done, right? So I will be setting authentication token in that. Fine, got it? And finally, once this much is done, in the filter chain I will call the next filter. So I will just say do filter with request and response. Alright. So what we have done in this, after token is validated, once token is validated, what we'll do, we will just create the instance of username password authentication token, because finally we should be setting it in our security context holder. So in this security context holder, earlier we have got principal, authorities, and for credentials initially it was null because it was not authenticated. Now when the authentication is done, we should be filling in this credentials. So this is what we are doing in this code. We are creating user password authentication in which we are providing user details, authorities, and credentials initially null, and we are setting the details in that, and finally we are filling up security context holder set authentication with this token. Finally, the authentication token is set in the security context holder. Fine. So token is validated and set in the security context holder, and finally we are calling the remaining filter chain. That is where we called it filter chain dot do filter. All right. This is about JWT validation code. Now let us bring up the application and test it using Postman. It's giving me some error. Okay, let's go ahead and check. Okay, let us mark JWT filter as component. So we have marked JWT filter as component. Okay, so that was the missing part. And let me just try to bring up the application again. So you can see Tomcat started on port 8080 and it started bookstore application. Alright, so let us open the Postman window and test it. So here is the Postman window. In the last session we created test user 3 with pass 3. We already have registered this user, or let us register one more user. So I'll just create user, let's say 10 with pass 10. So test user 10 with pass 10, and let me give role as user. Okay, let's send the request. User test 10 is created. Okay. And now for this user test 10, I will open this login URL, user info login. Fine. And I will give this time test user 10 and pass as pass 10. Fine. So with these two values, I am going ahead and creating the token, JWT token for this test user 10. I'll just say send, and you can notice I've got the JWT token. Let me just copy and open a get URL, and let's say I would like to get the book B2 from the bookstore. So as we discussed, for authorization we will this time select bearer token, because we are going to provide the JWT token for validation, not the username and password. And here in the token section, I will paste the token which we have just now created. Fine. And I'll just say send. Let's see what happens. So you can notice it's able to give me the details of book B2. Book ID, book name, price, author and description. We are able to validate with the help of our created JWT token. That is why it is able to, it's providing me the resources. I'm not giving any username and password this time. Rather, I'm just giving the token value and I'm able to get access to the resources. I believe we have book B3 also. So let us try getting B3. Send. You can notice we have got book ID B3, name, price and all the relevant fields. Fine.
What we have covered in this session, we have written the code for JWT token validation. We understood the complete flow and finally we tested our application. I hope you were able to code along with me. If you haven't yet done, go ahead, watch the session again and code, make your applications ready. If you like the session, hit the like button and share the session and channel details with your friends, family and colleague because I'll continue bringing such sessions on this channel. There are more Java, Spring Boot and microservices sessions available on this channel. Feel free to watch them. See you in the next session. Bye for now.